Introducing the new CLI. Install anything from anywhere. Add components, themes, hooks, functions, animations, and generated code to your apps. This marks a major step forward in distributing code that both you and your LLMs can access and use. Let's take a look. Oh boy, am I excited to take a look. If you don't already know Shadcn UI is a thing I've talked about quite a bit and used even more. It's the perfect combination. Like if you've seen my old video about how to think about UI libraries, Shad almost feels like it is the natural conclusion of all the things I talked about there, where it provides the useful components without compromising on the ownership. Because with Shadcn, it's not a library you're installing, it is components that you're adding to your project, and that code lives in the project. You might already know about all this, but just in case, for those who don't, if I hop into PickThing, the service I actually just released today, believe it or not, we can hop into components/UI, and all of these are the buttons that were generated for me by Shadcn, the dialog box generated for me, drop-down menu. I have the source code here. So if I want to change things, I want to maintain things, I want to update things, it is all code I own, and there is no compromise there. And that's why I like Shadcn so much. Not because it's a beautiful designed library, not because it works really well in TypeScript. I love it because it is writing the right code and putting it in your code base without compromising the ownership. That doesn't mean that it doesn't use packages. It still uses packages for things that make sense to. Like in here, the React dialog, the React drop-down menu, slot and switch. These are all provided by Radix, which is a headless UI library is the term, because these provide behaviors, not ways things look. And then Shad integrates it, gives it styles, adds Tailwind, all of that to make it look and interop with your code base really well. It's just a set of really well-designed components. But adding them to your code base has been a weird thing because it required that you had all the right dependencies, all the right versions of things, Tailwind already set up and configured, and all of that. And then you put it in the right place so it could interface with other things. Like if the accordion needed to use the caret, which was a different component that they provided, getting all of that to interface together was not easy. Which is why Shadcn created the CLI, where you can run the command to add something directly. Over time, the stuff you could do with Shadcn grew. V0, created by Vercel, and Shad, who works at Vercel now, was built to make it easier to generate UIs. And when you generate a UI with this, it is actually using a lot of Shadcn components in the process. So if I have like gallery of pictures with a drop-down menu on top to select a tag, and it will now generate different UIs based on the prompt that I gave it. So now we have this fake UI with profile images and the filter by tag, and I can click and drop down. But if we look at the code, this is where things get interesting. See that this code that they gave me is importing drop-down menu trigger, all these things from @/component/UI/drop-down menu. I could go just copy this code and drop it in my code base, but if I don't have all of these components already in my code base, it's not going to work because it's expecting those. So what they added is the ability to run the CLI command, npx v0 add, and then the hash for this specific instance. And not only will it create this particular component, it will also grab the Shadcn components that it depends on to make it as simple and reliable as possible to grab this AI-generated code and drop it in your code base. And that's why the CLI is so interesting, because the first version of Shadcn was copy paste the code in your code base, make sure you install the right things. V1 was the CLI. V2 is arguably, funny enough, named V0. It's the AI generation thing that we just showed with that special CLI to add that specific generated version. And now we're on V4, which is the Shadcn overhaul to make it way easier to add anything to your code base. What do I mean by anything? Let's dig in, because what we have now is way further than we were before, but what's coming is even more exciting. The CLI now has support for all major React frameworks out of the box. Next, Remix, Vite, and even Laravel. Yes, if you're using Laravel with inertia, you can now use the Shadcn CLI to initialize Shadcn's components in your PHP apps. At least somebody in the PHP world cares about user experience. That's a joke. They're actually pretty good about that. That's why inertia exists. Yeah. As I said here, when you initialize a new app, we update your existing Tailwind files instead of overriding them. That's huge. As someone who spends a lot of time putting crazy things in my Tailwind configs, the fact that Shadcn and it would override that pissed me off a lot. So fixing that is huge. A component now can ship its own dependencies. Take the accordion, for example. It can define its own Tailwind keyframes. That's huge. If the accordion has its own animations and it's using Tailwind for it, It no longer has to ship that as custom CSS. It can just add that to the Tailwind config. And that's kind of the magic of what they're doing here. No longer does the Shadcn template just run a pnpm install and then add these files to your code base. Now it can actually introspect and modify specific files based on specific needs. And that's why I'm getting excited, because I see a future where I could run npx shadcn add upload thing, and it will add upload thing to your code base and put the right files in the right place and add the right layers in the right spots. Using this CLI is the way to do it. I almost made this CLI myself. I actually snagged the T3 NPM package, and my original plan was to build something like this to make it easier to just add things to your code base. I might still do it. I have to use that package for something. It's so cool. But like, that was a specific goal, and seeing them achieve it here is really cool. As Shad said, this means we can now install hooks, utils, themes, animations, routes, and complex blocks with multi-file components. Everything is added right where you need it. This is a huge unlock for code distribution. Yes, absolutely this is. And I am so excited for what we could potentially do with this. This example, npx shadcn add login 01. It grabs it from the registry, it creates those, and now the new login page just exists in your code base. How cool is that you can run a command and it creates new routes and new experiences in your app based on their syntax for defining it. It's so cool. It's so cool. You can also install remote components that are using URLs. So if we have a V0 block, something we chatted with V0 about, you can add it that way. Someone just dropped an example in chat too. That doesn't have anything in it, but you could point it at a JSON file and it will parse the right things from it if it's formatted correctly, and it will just add that to your code base. That's so cool. They also improved the init command, which is huge because the init command was not reliable before. It's a small thing, but like, I hate the @ syntax. Just, it's a personal thing. I like the ~. Apparently there's something else that's better. I forgot what it was, but there's a thing that like exists in JS natively that you can use here instead. I have a thing saved about it that somebody shared, but I have a personal preference and it did not like my personal preference in the past. I'm thankful that they fixed it. So this example, they init a Shadcn project, sidebar 01, login 01. So it's adding those as well. You can create a new next project with this. Pick your theme. And now just running the npx shadcn init command with a couple of those, like the things you want to add, you just created a new next project that has the login page and the other route, the dashboard. All just by running those two commands, or that one command. That's really cool. The ability to like use this to add something that you quickly generated to your existing project, or even to start something new. If I was one of those startups that's trying to do like prompt-based generation of like apps, I'd be shaking in my fucking boots right now. Yeah, we created a new schema that you can use to ship your own component registry. And since it supports URLs, you can use it to distribute private components. That's actually really cool. If you had a URL that's only accessible on like a VPN, you could use this to hit that as a way to like, if you're spinning up a new project and you need your company's like design library, this will let you hit that on a private network and get it directly. That's so fucking cool. There's a whole changelog for us to dig into as well here. Okay, so components.json will now exist in your project. Apparently you can, look, they called out my weird case here. You can use different import aliases by specifying it there. That's really cool. Shall we init one? I'm curious enough. Let's do it. Start a new next project. I guess it's double nested, whatever. Now we have this. Why did it use bun if I did pnpm? Is it defaulting to bun when you run pnpm? The fuck? Whatever. Small thing. I remember this happening in the past with the create T3 app template, funny enough. Let's go to dashboard. Yeah, that just worked. Am I running my project locally? Is that why the CSS is wrong? No, it's not. Okay. Seems like there were some issues with the CSS and the coloring here because a lot of that is not following contrast rules. It's possible it's using the dark mode because of my computer. Yeah, this looks like the dark mode is being handled properly. This looks like it's not. Because they have the separate dark rules here, all applied as variables, by the way, which makes it a lot easier to change these things and have them persist everywhere. Heavy use of CSS variables to make life a lot better. But the really cool thing is it's giving you the code. It's not like it's generating this code or grabbing it from somewhere else. You never get to touch it. Login form is a file in my code base that is using all of these components that are from Shadcn. And I can go in here and change it and use it however I want. That's really cool. And the exciting future that I see here is the ability to have this be your onboarding flow. So imagine if instead of login form being this generic thing with no functionality that gets added, what if you could add clerk login form or stack auth login form or Lucia login form, and it will add this code and the logic and the package necessary and the endpoints if those are necessary too. The thing I'm excited about here is that this isn't just like Shadcn being easier to adopt to do UI things. This is a step forward in how these init things work. The classic docs page, everyone's had to write at some point of all the steps to add this thing to your project could be replaced with a single command. And then you can just read the diff. And that's, as silly as it sounds, one of the things I'm most excited about. To run the command, see the thing working, and then understand it after. Because right now, the order of events is the opposite. Is I have to go through the upload thing docs, I have to understand what each of the pieces is, add them all to my code base, and then I could see it working and know if it's for me or not. What if I could run one command, see the thing, quickly determine if it's for me or not, and then read the diff afterwards? Being able to use this to add things to existing code bases in that way is genuinely really exciting for that reason. I am hyped to see what it will look like to just read the diff. And even here, since it initted a normal next project first, we can still read the diff. Here we see it adding the CSS there because it didn't already have it. Here we see all the packages that were added with the command that we ran, because that command needs all the Radix UI stuff for all those different pieces. We can see the way it changed the config for our Tailwind config and all the things it added there. And we can see these new components here too. We can see it created the app sidebar component, all the things it's importing from Lucid, which is a ton, but it's using all of those icons for things. The nav menu, the nav pieces all from our component library, the sidebar. And it's so easy to dig through this and see what actually changed. And now if I put it up for code review, others can see it too. Being able to understand a thing, not through the docs, not through the getting started, not through all of those as blockers to try it, but being able to just run a command to try it and then look at how it affected your code base. This is a thing I've said for a while. Like, if you want to learn a code base, like if you want to learn how upload thing works, the intuition might be to start here. But if your goal is to deeply understand upload thing and to really understand, like if you wanted to contribute to upload thing, you don't get there by reading through every line of code starting at the top. The code tab, this tab here, is not the tab you want to start with if you want to understand code bases. You need to start with the pull request tab. In here is where you'll start to really learn and understand how this code base works, especially if you look at the closed PRs that merged. Here you'll see what code is actually changing, how it's changing, and why we changed it. You'll get a lot more out of this tab. And that's why I'm excited here, because this makes it easier to get to that part where you can really understand how these things work. On the topic of diffs, every once in a while, someone smart, like, Guillermo Roche, and then my CTO, it gives you this piece of useful info. Let's see, kit config. Really helpful thing you can put in here, undo, reset -- soft. Now you have a git undo that for the most part works. Also on push, auto setup remote true, life changer. Oh, that was so necessary. I wish I had that years ago. Cool. Now we have that. Theoretically, git diff. Okay. Yeah. That's a lot better. I now have syntax highlighting when I'm diffing locally. Did not think I would significantly change how I do code review locally while filming this. There we go. You can also add line numbers. Ooh. Only catch there is it makes copy paste break, but copy paste is already broken. It's a fucking diff. Who cares? Okay, yeah. In my new CLI tools video, it goes. Also, LG, by the way, lazy git, similarly fucking dope. Doesn't have syntax highlighting though, and now that I've seen that there, I need to find a way to add syntax highlighting here. Or even just change the diff view in it. But yeah, more for me to deal with later. Hopefully this is good info for you guys now. The future of installing things is bright. Anything Shadcn does is magical. Oh, this one's great. Somebody is using V0 and like the Shad CLI to create Minecraft, writing as little code as possible. Because all this shit supports 3D stuff now too, which is nuts. Yeah, here's just a V0 chat. that has resulted in a Minecraft clone in the browser written primarily by you or AI. This shit's like starting to advance in ways that it can actually meaningfully improve our workflows. And that's very fun. Speaking of which, if this stuff's interesting to you, cursor video coming soon as well. That's all. Until next time, peace nerds.